What I'm going to ask you to do, whether you do it or not is entirely up to you, but what I'd like you to do is to sit down quietly somewhere and just listen with your eyes closed. You don't have to sit in any particular way, just somewhere where you won't be disturbed, where you're comfortable, where you can just forget about your body. You don't have to follow any particular breathing or anything, just relax in a nice quiet place where you won't be disturbed. Because I want you to try and go into yourself by listening to these words and see how they apply to you inside. And at the same time as that, as being the witness, I'm going to be trying to talk to the witness part of you. I'd like that part of you to try to notice what arises when it hears these words that is beyond itself. The witness in presence is always listening, and when it hears itself speak, it tunes into that, because there is only one witness in presence. It's the same in me as it is in you. It's just that this part that's in me has free rein to speak, wherein most of the time, in most of us, it's clouded by the mind and it doesn't get a chance to come out. But we all recognise it when we hear it, because it's in all of us. So you may find in your mind, as you listen to these words, that part of your mind is telling me that I'm wrong. You're saying, what's she talking about? Who she thinks she is? That's the part of the mind that doesn't want to go there. It doesn't want to accept that it's something else bigger. It wants to hold on to its smallness. It's all it knows. To accept that there's a higher consciousness, something bigger than it, means it's annihilation, or so it believes. It doesn't know that it can just merge, that it is that. It sees itself as separate from that, something worse than that, something where it wouldn't be accepted. And so it rejects before it can be rejected, because it has no idea that what it truly is would never reject it, whatever it thinks and feels. It's just not the way of things. The mind does all the rejecting, all the judging, all the criticising, all the grandeur, all of it. Who you really are does none of it. It just observes, it watches. It doesn't get involved. It just loves. And I say it just loves, it just bees. It has no emotion as such. It's just easy going. It's like a mother looking at its child, looking at a toddler exploring and playing, but without the need to protect. Because the only thing it would be protecting is itself, and it's completely free. So it sees no need to protect, to steer, to guide. It's willing to allow itself to go in any direction it goes in. It has no rules. The rules all come from the mind and the conditioning. So now, hopefully you're sat down somewhere quietly with your eyes shut. See if you can sink into that place that I'm talking about, that place that's within you, that knows, it just knows. So when it hears these words, it knows them. It knows freedom. It's the mind that cannot fathom what's beyond itself. It doesn't know that behind itself there's another self that really holds all the power. The mind tries to twist itself into the shape it thinks it needs to be in. It tries to mimic what it thinks of as reality, but it can't be that. Because when it's stuffed to the rafters with a lifetime of ideas and conditioning, there's no room for it to see outside of its made-up self. But that's your job. Your job as the one that knows. It's your job as your higher self to bring your mind back home. It's your job to to see through all its tantrums and set ideas and beliefs and kindly and lovingly guide it back into knowing. It, in its original space, sprung from the knowing. Its feet are in the knowing. It's just confused and disconnected. And the part of the mind that brings the grandiose and the feelings of being better and more, they're just as confused as the parts that feel that it's nothing and it's worthless. The part that brings grandiose, it does it to counteract the feelings of worthlessness. The part of you that big ups yourself and says, I'm amazing, to the outside world, it's doing that because inside it feels like nothing. It's just a play, a duality that plays out in the human experience. Because in truth you are not this life. This world that you have constructed, it's just a game. And you play it with yourself. And you're so amazing at the game that you believe it. You are literally tricking yourself into believing the story of your life. Just think about that for a minute. Just put yourself into that place of knowing. And if you can't actually believe it as yet, imagine it. Imagine what it would be like if you knew that you weren't this life. That this life was just something that was happening. It's an illusion, a game that you're playing because you want to play it. When you're in your true knowing, this life that you hold so sacred and so tightly, you can see that all it is a stunning, mind-blowing illusion. All the little things that you take so seriously, all the rules and regulations you believe, all the thoughts of being alone and separate are just imagined. There's nothing that can separate you from your true self but your own thinking. And the only way to undo that thinking is to put your full attention on it from this perspective of knowing. Imagine how different your world would look if you no longer believed your thoughts, your made-up world. Imagine what it would feel like if you could just see things as they are without any story attached. Try it today. When you get up from here and you move back into your life, just for fun, try and see it from the outside. I mean, chances are, if you're like me, you've always felt on the outside anyway, looking in. That is what spurs us on in the game. That's what makes us become these seekers, because we never quite buy into it. And that's why we can never settle. It just never feels quite right. It never feels true. And then on top of that feeling is the whole of the made-up mind. And so for people like us, our made-up mind sits in us like a stone. You know, it jars you because every time it pops up, there's a feeling somewhere that a lie's being told. And it is. That feeling of discontentment, of never feeling quite right, it's your true nature. And people like us, it's very close to the surface. And it's always just nearly breaking through the illusion. Because it never buys into it. Never. In most of humanity, the true self is deep, deep down. It's more hidden. It doesn't trouble the player in the game. These humans are playing a different game. Their game isn't about waking up, it's about full immersion. You were there once. Before you grew enough that the illusion couldn't sit well, you were also that. You are all experiences. Your focus is from this avatar. But in reality, you are every single speck of life that has ever been, ever will be, You're all possibilities, all polarities. You hold the potential for all human extremes. The greatest acts of kindness and the most apparent acts of cruelty is all you. Every single human being holds all of these possibilities. And your true nature knows this, and it sees it for what it is. It is just self, when self doesn't remember. Forgetting is the game, and the consequences for that forgetting forges the actions of the avatar. The avatar is like a collection, it's like a collecting machine. It collects data, stores it, and plays it back when it receives a cue. And this is a wonderful system, because it helps you understand this world and how it works. Problem is that the made-up mind becomes confused and fragments, and war breaks out. And so life scrambles the clarity. Life is contradictory and has endless expressions. It has duality always, in every moment, because this life, this world is dual. But the human mind wants to fit in every situation. And so it fragments and it morphs into whatever it feels the outside world requires of it at any moment. But the problem arises when what the outside world brings is so big and so terrifying and scary when we're children, that the fragmented parts stay fragmented and they don't join back together. And so harmony can't be then. Because whichever part of the mind is in the driving seat, there's another part behind telling the driver they're driving it wrong. So instead of sitting next to the driver and doing the map reading and being constructive, whichever part is not at the forefront is being disruptive, critical of the driving. It tries to grab the wheel. It tries to control. And so there's never harmony. Because each part of the made-up mind thinks it's the one. I'm the real one, the one that knows. Each part feels that. Each part thinks that the other parts are imposters. And then, but gradually, slowly, when you turn your attention onto it, each part of the mind, when it's driving, looks over from the driver's seat, and it sees out of its little window, and it sees it was never driving. The car, it thinks it's controlling, is just like a sidecar, to the true driver's Harley Davidson. And you look at the driver on the bike and you see that it's never perturbed by the way the road twists and dips and rises. It just drives. It knows it's a game. It's travelling through. It's like a horse on a Ferris wheel. It knows it will never fall off or get lost. It just goes round and around. It's the one sat on the horse that feels it may get lost or go wrong or not be good enough. Don't feel guilty about being the rider, for believing that you're the rider, because that's the point of the game. Wherever you are is perfectly fine. It's only the mind that tells you otherwise. Clarity is always there. It's just the mind is in front of the clarity, confusing things. It arises out of it. And then it turns back to clarity and says, why have you forsaken me? Why have you left me out here on my own? Because it doesn't get, it's pulled itself out and then turns towards what it is and cries at it, help me. But it's the one pulling itself away. And it does that because life shows it that. Life programs it to believe that. But it isn't true. And the way to untangle this mess that we live in is for this part of you that knows to become the witness, for you to see through where the mind is made up and witness it and love it. So whenever the mind comes up with something, when it's got a problem where it thinks, oh my God, the road's this is happening, that's happening, you're there. Then you just put it right. You take your clarity, your knowing, to where there's darkness. And in doing so, you illuminate that. If you think it's just like you've got like 20 confused people with you, all believing their own little set of ideas. And so when one panics and comes to you with its idea, you just answer it. You be there like its mother. And you say, darling, it's not that. It's not that. And you meet it with love, with open arms. And when you do that, eventually they start to listen, and they start to turn to you, and they start to believe you, and they start to listen to each other, and they start to see that actually things aren't as bad as they thought they were. Because if every time it gives you something that it hurts it, you take it from it deflates. They're like jack-in-the-boxes that spring out when we're children, and every time they absorb something, their little body expands, and after a short period of time, they can't go back in the box. The lid won't go down anymore. And so they're there all the time, and they don't know why. All they know is they're full of angst, and they're full of their beliefs and what they think. And what you do is every time you go to one when it speaks to you, every time you listen to something that wants to tell you something, you take it away. And eventually the little body shrinks back down, and the jack-in-the-box can sit back in the box. The lid can go back on, and it's happy in there. It doesn't need anything. And then if anything happened in life that it was needed, the lid will pop, up it would come. It would do its job when the thing was finished. If you don't allow that to then be absorbed in the body of the little jack-in-the-box, it's seen through until it's empty again, then the lid can go back down. And eventually you can get all your lids down. And so nobody's running riot. There's just space. And then in that space, if something wonderful happens, say you see something beautiful and it sparks, joy will pop open and happiness will pop open. And they will express in the moment, and then they'll go back down. And nothingness resumes again. But the nothingness is not empty. It's potential. It's potential for the boxes to ping. And that's the magic, when the boxes ping open. And the thing inside gets to see and to express and to feel. The problem is we don't like half of the boxes. We don't want half of the boxes. We've been told all lies that half of the boxes are no good. Don't have that box. Keep the lid on that. But the problem is the lid doesn't stay on. We just pretend it has. So what we project to the outside world, or try to, is that all the lids are on all the boxes, or that we don't even have the boxes. But in fact, behind the scenes, there's mayhem and carnage and anger and pain and hurtfulness, all going on as you're just trying to negotiate life. But the only way is to take out what each box holds, until each little jack-in-the-box can rest. It seems frightening, it seems daunting, and that's what the thing that's most important to me to get across is the thing that frightens you the most is your liberation, is actually the thing that will liberate you if you can find the strength to go there. That is my motivation for this, is to try and get people to see through the thing that frightens them so much that they can't find their freedom, because it's there. And it's all of ours. It doesn't belong to anybody. It belongs to us all. When I feel how I suffered, when I can look at myself as I was, believing what I believed, behaving the way I behaved because I believed what I believed, the nightmare my life was for me, even though on the outside world it may not look that much different to other people. I live in heaven now. You know, my boxes, the lids are down. They come out when needed. If I need to work something out, ping, out comes the one that knows how to work things out. And then when it's done its working out, lid goes back down. So I can live my life freely now. I can walk around on my own. If I want to talk to someone, if I have a thought from where I am about something, I can engage any part of my mind that I want. But they're friendly now because they're not full of anxiety and pain and fear. And so they're happy. My mind is happy. My avatar has sorted out all its parts, and so now from within this game it can be experienced as a pleasant thing to do, rather than waking up every morning thinking, oh Christ, not this shit again. And that can be yours too. But it takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes love, and that's all. That's the only things you need. Curiosity, love, and patience. And the willingness to turn away from the outside world for a while until you can find clarity inside. The thing is, if you can find that time, however long it takes, to do that, your world is a different world. Love yourself back home. It might sound a bit prissy, but it's the truth. Love is the answer. You even have to love the bits that are hateful, and some of them are hateful. Really hateful. But they're only like it because of what they've ingested. They are a product of the environment they grew up in. The feelings that they hold are because of what happened and what they thought about what happened. Because the mind doesn't only store what the actual event, it stores all the thoughts it had around that event, what each part of the mind felt. So when you think of that event again, everything that was involved when it happened, every part of the mind that was involved will resurface and have their say again. So your job is when a memory comes and everything starts having its say, listen. That's it, listen. See how you felt in that minute. And once you do that and you go into yourself and you see how you felt in that minute, how things were experienced in that moment, you can't hold that against yourself anymore. The things that you've held against yourself that you feel guilty and shame and awful about, when you look at them, you really go into it, you see that there is no way that you could have acted any differently than you did. You were traumatised, you were hurt, you were in pain. You were striking out because of what you believed. You have to love yourself. You have to love yourself like if a 5-year-old came to you and told you something terrible it had done. You know, in its little mind, something trivial is huge and it's terrible. But when you see it from your end, you say, oh, sweetheart, of course it isn't. It's not like that. And you meet yourself with that, with love. So I hope that these words have helped you to see through, to see the clarity a little bit more. Just try it. Just try being with you. You are, at the end of the day, the only thing you ever really have. You go with you everywhere you go. Everything you do, you're there, and your whole mind's there. So wouldn't it be nice if that mind was kind, was encouraging, was helpful when needed, but the rest of the time it just wasn't there. It was willing to just let you do it. That's the thing, it becomes willing. It surrenders to realising that it's not its place. I don't need to do that. She's got that. That's what mine says. Oh, it's alright, she's got it. Because that's what I've said to it over and over and over again. It's alright, I've got this. Don't worry about it, I've got it. You just let me take care of this. You let me be it. You just be here with me. You can look out from under my skirt if you want. But I've got this. And that's what it's about. It's you taking control, so this frightened mind that's scrabbling around trying desperately to hold on to everything gradually sees there's a grown-up here that knows how to do this, and then the mind can be childlike. It can explore, it can be free. It doesn't see the negativity in things. This is an example of the other night I came home and there was a big ball of string on the table. It wasn't a ball, it was a big knotty lump of string, thick like rope string. And I said to Guy, what's that there for? Because I thought, why has he needed to string something? And he said, oh, well, the string that holds up the, we've got like a sail above our outside terrace to keep the sun off. It snapped. And so he'd gone to it was in the laundry room, and the string had actually fallen down and been soaked with washing powder. And so he started telling me the story of how this rope, he needed to use it, but it was just stiff and hard with dried washing powder, and so he'd had to put it in a bucket. and wash it, and he was saying there was soap everywhere, and I was like, oh wow, how exciting, that must have been brilliant, because to me that it was, oh, he was explaining bubbles everywhere. I'm like, whoa, because the mind becomes childlike. It doesn't see that, oh, how annoying, that probably took 15 minutes, I could have been doing something sensible then. It just goes, whoa, great, brilliant. And it could see the whole thing, like pulling the string through the hands and how the bubbles would have flown everywhere. And Guy looked at me and said, well, I suppose that's one way of seeing it. And everything is seen like that. Everything is just seen as, wow, exciting, or everything's it's just exploration. And you don't mind being childlike and open. And I wish that for you. I wish that's the thing I wish with more than anything, is that other people can have that too. Because at the end of the day, we're all one. And I would say it's lonely here, but it isn't. It's not lonely at all, because I'm never lonely. Because I am all things. And so are you. So I'm going to sign off there and just hope that, yeah, there's been something here that's, if nothing else, has just made you feel a little bit calmer, a little bit more connected to who you are.